Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Stonespine Architects from Thunderworks Games. Stonespine Architects is a 1 to 5 player dungeon building game which players are going to be building out their dungeons by drafting hands of cards across 4 rounds of play, trying to gather various goals as well as being mindful of the general game goal in place, as well as their own blueprints that you're trying to figure out how to accomplish. A whole bunch of things you're trying to do. We're going to go through all of that, but first, of course, this is a prototype. All rules and components, everything you see here is subject to change, and I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. Also, this guy can be bought on the crowdfunding campaign. He's a giant little plushie. He does not make the game better, but what he does for your living space is a different conversation. Anyways, going back to Stonespine Architects, this is a 1 to 5 player game, like I said already. Across the course of the game, 4 rounds of play specifically, you're going to have 5 cards in your hand over here. We're going to take 5 cards. You're going to be taking a look at these cards and trying to select which card is best for your dungeon. These are all of a very specific type over here. You see there's 2 dungeon types, the more stone or the more cavern type dungeon types, and those will go, you can see the little indicators in the top corner. You're trying to place these into your dungeon to fulfill a variety of goals. This is where understanding how things score is helpful before we actually start drafting cards. And I already have the first round of cards already set out here just so you can see things. But looking at the final scoring card over here, you have final priority. You're going to get 9, 6, or 3 points based on your position on the priority track. That's going to be effectively the money you have over here. Well, the money sort of converts into these over here. So you're going to be getting your positioning based on the priority track over here, game end there. You're going to get goal cards based on the goal cards. You're going to get points based on the goal card that you have. That's a single card. From a whole bunch of cards, you're going to have a single card that defines what you're trying to go for in the dungeon. In this case, pairs of slimes and oozes. The more pairs of slimes and oozes you have, the more you're going to get. Whoever has the most will get 15, then 9, then 5. I already have a pair of slimes and oozes, and I should be trying to get some more. You're also going to have challenge cards. Across the 4 rounds of play, at the end of round 1, 2, and 3, you're going to draft a challenge card. We'll talk more about that. But these are these cards that will come out from this gigantic deck full of challenge cards over here, each of them giving you different things you're trying to get into your dungeons. So for example, Goblin Gathering here will give you 3 points per goblin in a single column of your dungeon. So if I can get a whole bunch of goblins over here, because I already have 1, maybe I can get as much as, I don't know, 24 points if I really try hard at it. You can get a lot of points from it. And there's going to be a bunch of these cards to draft, and you'll score for 3 of those cards. At the end of the 4th round, you don't draft another one of those. Then you're going to have your chamber reputation. That means certain cards or chambers are going to have positive or negative points on them. You'll simply gain or lose those points. You'll have your blueprint. That's going to be a card you're going to be given at the beginning of the game that defines what you're trying to specifically do. So for example, in the top left corner of my dungeon, I want to have a star, whether positive or negative. I have that. Over here, I want to have that terrain type over there. I'm going to have a trap over here, another terrain type over there. You're going to see different elements you have here. And depending on if you accomplish 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8 elements, you can get as many as 20 points for accomplishing your blueprints. And then lastly, you have dungeon paths. The idea of dungeon paths is you're going to have an entrance or exit, and exit. You have an entrance, which is defined by your blueprint, an exit, which will go down at the end of the game at the very, bottom of your dungeon. And then for every single room, for every single chamber connected to your entrance, you get a point. For every chamber connected to your exit, you get a point. And that means 2 points for every chamber that's connected to both. And so over here, just for example, you can see this chamber has a pathway, which means it's already worth a point. This one is worth a point, and then this one and this one are not yet worth a point. Although theoretically, I can come around and loop back up to it, depending on how I build out that next layer. So those are the things you're trying to get for points. You're trying to be mindful of the goal card, your challenge cards, how you build out your dungeon, your blueprint, a bunch of things you're trying to do. And now that we know that, let's go ahead and just play through a round. This is round 2 over here. Let's in fact pretend that we drafted a card. Let's take a card that we have over here. Let's do this one. Let's do this one over here. We're going to pretend that we got this card. Let's pretend in round 1 we drafted this card, which has gained 4 reputation for each row or column containing only 1 type of dungeon. Which means over here I've already filled it in this row, because this is a row that has variable types. And now let's go ahead and start drafting cards. So offhand, I like getting connection points because this connection point over here will really help me in terms of trying to connect to my dungeon. And it's good for getting those slimes because we want those pairs of slimes and oozes. It's not the best for some other things. Let's go ahead and try to place this out and see how that goes. So we're going to go ahead and place that out, and you're actually going to overlay the monetary amount. So now I have a nice connection point, which means it's going to be a little easier to try to build out that row. We'll pass to the next player, and we'll select 5 more cards, or 4 more cards. We're just going to grab random sets of cards. Let's pretend it's a 3-player game, so that other card will come back to me shortly. So with these cards over here, let's take a look at what I got past. I got past these. I am inclined to take this one only because of the fact that it will help me for my rows and columns that are the same type. Because if I place any of the other ones into my dungeon, I'm already going to lose that. But I don't know if I necessarily... It's tricky, because the problem is this one doesn't really help me. That specific kobold over there won't help me. and these ones over here could help me. I kind of want to get the oozes. These two oozes can help a lot, even though I really don't like their positioning. You know what? I think we're going to go for it. We're going to go ahead and place these oozes. I think goblins is not. We're going to place this ooze down over here and then pass this to the next player. Then we're going to go ahead and pass the next 3 cards that got handed to us. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at these. And what do we got? We got a goblin. The goblin is not bad. It can help me for this if I draft that card. But I don't know if I necessarily need to. You know what? We're going to go for the goblin. We'll see how it plays out. We're going to put the goblin down over here. Although we're really messing up our rows and columns here. Alternatively, if I do a path, if I do this path over here, maybe I can score. You know, we're going to go for the path over here because this will give me more flexibility moving downwards, as well as the fact that it helps me at least for getting that row. Maybe I can get 2 rows out of it. This is not going to be a high scoring card for me, but we'll see. I'm going to pass it back to the next person. We're going to have only 2 cards coming back from my original hand. So for my original hand, we got these 2 coming back, which is, this is not my original hand. We're going to have my original hand is these 4 cards. We're going to take 2 random cards from this hand. And we're going to take a look at this, and then we're going to select one of these and discard the last one. And none of these are particularly amazing. I don't need the kobolds. The points at least help. This one, gain 1 reputation for each kobold, goblin, or gnoll in the 4 central chambers. That's not the 4 central chambers, so you know what? Honestly, we're not doing great here. I almost want the varied composition over here, although that goes directly against what we're doing here. But we're going to go ahead and place this down over here, and there we go. That is a round. We'll discard our last card, and that is how you play a round. Now what you're going to do there is now we're going to add up what we have. Do we have any treasure chests in our dungeon? We do not. Treasure chests will help get us more money, but in lieu of treasure chests, you'll always get the bottom row, but those will be covered up. Versus if you had a treasure chest anywhere over here, then these stay in place. You'll get that money every single round. That's actually a pretty fun card there. But past that, so we have 4 plus 2 plus 3 plus 3, which is 12 money. We're going to put our money marker at 12 over here. So we're going to mark it to 12. And then from there, depending on whatever the other players put their markers, let's say the yellow player got to an 11. Over here, I can start spending money. See, in the end of round, you're going to start spending your money over here to try to buy various things or to take a gold card. At any point, you can pass and take a gold card, but then your money drops to 0, so you have to be mindful of that. In this case over here, I think I want to spend money first. I'm assuming other players will want to spend money as well. And a lot of these are helpful in different ways. That 7's useful just to even just get that, you know, slime over here, which is really not bad. Although this will give us a pathway between different areas, which is also not bad. Honestly, there's a lot we can do over here. I don't know how strongly I feel about it. You know what? Let's go for this one. We're going to spend 7 going from 12 down to 5 and take the secret pathway plus this little marker here. So this will go down over here. We'll drop it on this tile. You can have up to 4 elements in a tile, and I don't yet have enough information as to why I would want to put it elsewhere. Although this one over here, this we're going to go ahead and connect. That way we have a guaranteed pathway between these two. That's a secret passage token that lets you get to an otherwise blocked off zone. Which means right now everything's kind of connected, and I can hope to try to get these connected later, although I will have to work on it for sure to get that up over there. Then this player over here, they're going to go ahead and spend 4, let's say, and they can go down to 7, which means they'll take this tile. But that also means they can go again before us, and they might choose one of these. In fact, they're going to go ahead and take Minion Horde because that's worth a ton of points to them, and they're going to pass down to 0, which means now I can choose to spend more. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and spend 3, 1, 2, 3 to take that star, because why in the world wouldn't I? Top it down over here. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and take one of these. And the Goblin one is tempting. Honestly, I'm doing pretty terribly at this one. Gain 3 reputation for each uniquely sized cluster of chambers. For each uniquely sized cluster. Interesting. So it's not about the count, it's about the unique sizing. I don't know how it's going to work. We're going to go for the goblins and hope for the best. And now we have our second card over there. The mark is going to go ahead and clear. You'll refill it, and you continue to the next round. And then you'll continue doing that across 4 rounds of play, gathering new goal cards, new challenge cards, being mindful of the goal card in play, being mindful of how you build out your dungeon, all trying to be just taking into account everything as you build things out. And then, of course, looking at your blueprint at the end to see how many of these you accomplish. That's how you play Stonespine Architects. There's also a little mini expansion, as they tend to do, as Thunderworks tends to do, the Shrines and Fountains mini expansion. That's going to allow you to introduce a bunch of shrines and fountains that get mixed and shuffled into the deck, which means these won't come in that often. You have a giant deck of cards over here, and you have like 7 cards that are being shuffled in. You'll see like 1 or 2 of these per game, maybe 3 depending on the player count you're playing at. But these will give you more elements, but they also give you a shrine or a fountain, as well as the fact that some of these cards count as both dungeon types, which is very fun. So this card over here is both dungeon types, and when that comes out, that gives you a lot of flexibility as far as how you can build your row out. This over here would mean we have a fully connected area here, but also this is kind of connected. It gives you a fun ways to build your dungeon, but then also the shrines and fountains give you the ability to move tokens around that you've already placed, or to swap cards entirely and everything on them. So that's a fun little expansion to mix in. I kind of wish there were more of those cards so they came out more frequently, but as it is, you'll see a few of them game to game, and that is the little mini expansion. Which means it's time to move on to the review, starting off with ease of play. Overall, this is a fairly easy one to dive into, nothing overly complicated. Ultimately, you're drafting cards, placing them down to your dungeon. The turn sequence is very easy to follow, the rules are very easy to follow. Not a lot that really throws you off, I guess. A fairly easy game to get up and running and to teach and to play, and plays in around 45 minutes per game. You can see it going faster or slower, but around 45 minutes per game. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting off with what I like, which is the general dungeon building is satisfying. You're going to be building out 4 rows of cards here, a 16 card grid, a 4x4 grid, and trying to balance everything as you go is part of the challenge and fun of the game. You have the goals to go for, you have the challenges to go for, you want to connect cards to your dungeon, you have inherent points in them, you want to try to get more money to be able to buy more things, because you get to buy tokens from these marker cards. These marker cards, by the way, you swap out new marker cards every round, and the amount of challenge cards and marker cards are variable depending on the player count, and then you'll grab tokens from this pile, putting them onto the cards, so you have different configurations of what actually comes out, and you're just trying to balance everything. There's a lot to balance. Even just the points you're trying to get and the scoring goals versus how much money you have every round, that's another thing you want to be mindful of. And you're building both towards what you currently know, which is your own blueprints, the goal in play, and any challenge cards you have, and trying to be mindful of the fact that there's going to be challenge cards coming up as well, and so there's just a lot to take into account as you go through it. And that, taking all that into account, is where the fun is. Looking at a hand of cards and realizing that one of these cards is perfect for helping your dungeon connect to other pathways and really help you give you that, that 4-point intersection along with the treasure chest in it, that's excellent. But the problem is, what if you really need kobolds and gelatinous cubes? What if you need those over there, the slimes and the oozes? What if you need the oozes plus the kobolds in order to play things out? And what if this is the tile you actually need to match your blueprint because you need a cavern as opposed to a whatever this type as opposed to that type? So you're trying to balance different things and giving up cards that you know you'll need, hoping they come back to you. Especially at lower player counts, if you're playing this at 2 or 3 players, there's a higher chance something will come back to you. And so paying attention to what you draft and whether your opponents need them, that's another factor you're trying to be mindful of. In general, the tightness of getting things done, trying to achieve that perfect goal with a small degree of just things happening. There's not a ton happening in this game, but you're trying to balance all of that, trying to figure out how to build the perfect dungeon. You're an architect, a Stonespine Architect. Is that a thing? What's a Stonespine Architect? You're an architect in the stone. What's Stonespine? I don't know what Stonespine is. You're an architect trying to build out your actual dungeon over here, trying to take into account things and drafting challenges as you go through it. And the challenges are easily my favorite part. That idea that as you go through the game, you evolve your own set of goals. So it's not a system where you have a common set of goals that all the players are going for. Well, there's one common goal. But rather you have a common goal and that you're drafting challenges every round. And you have to try to think through that tightness when you try to think, well, I want to buy more stuff from the market. But if I do so, someone else might take the challenge that's perfect for me. And I have to be careful with that, especially if I'm winning and they're trying to deny me points. You have to be mindful as you go through the game what you're trying to do in order to most efficiently optimize your score in the game. As far as what I don't like in the game, the core gameplay loop doesn't feel amazingly variable. This is a game that as you play through it game to game, the core idea of drafting cards and having just a ton of symbols in them, that kind of starts off fairly samey game to game, because especially for me in this game, the game evolves as you gather challenge cards. And so the fact that you don't start with challenge cards, you start with a singular goal and the hope of potential challenges, means a lot of the gameplay is draft cards with things on them until you start getting to the halfway point where it starts to matter more and more as you get through the game. You really need to have those challenges to drive forward what you're trying to do and why, which means the first half of the game feels like it's still a little bit ambient. Sure, I need an ooze, but right now I don't have oozes, so in that case I'm just looking at, do I want more traps or do I want more kobolds? I don't know, it depends on what I draft later. That lack of knowledge in the game means that first of all, you're working with a lack of knowledge, so there's going to be a degree of kind of finding out what might matter as you go through the game, but then additionally you're working with the idea that, you're just trying to, the cards that you're playing don't always have as much impact or meaning as you'd like, because their potential impact or meaning will evolve as you go through the game. Hopefully that makes sense. A lot of things to manage and balance, but some of the drafting doesn't feel as important until later on because you're working with more limited sets of information earlier on in the game. And to that end, I almost wish the cards had text or abilities or something that made them stand out more, because early game they sometimes matter, sometimes don't, and later game they really feel like everything matters so much more as you play through it. That last round, incredibly impactful. The second last round, very impactful, but the first round, barely impactful, and the second round, it matters, sure. There's what to take into account. I wish there was a bit more to keep the cards constantly interesting, or to give you more challenges up front, or even possibly, and this is something you could easily house rule, of, showing the challenges that will be in play as you go through it, so even just knowing the potential options on the table could definitely be overwhelming if you're new to the game, but as you get better at the game, the idea of seeing all the potential challenges, seeing in round 1 you're going to have these challenges, in round 2 you're going to have those, and so you won't even necessarily know if you're going to earn them, but at least it might give you that information for you. Although it also might make the game more tedious and too much to manage, so that I have not played that way, it's just an idea off the cuff. As far as I can see others not liking, First of all, kind of I mentioned already, to a certain extent, you are building towards the unknown. You have to be comfortable with that. For me, there's two different aspects at play. One I mind, the other one I don't mind, but I can see being a problem for you. I mind the fact that I want every card to matter as I go, and so that's just, I want to feel like everything matters all the time, and sometimes I don't get that feeling. The aspect that you might mind that I personally don't is you might put things into your dungeon, and then just, you know, as the game develops, you're like, oh, that is important, and I didn't know that was important. You are building towards the unknown, and you don't have that information or knowledge, that's the nature of building towards the unknown, until it comes up. The challenges will show up later, and you'll figure out whether what you've done towards those challenges, meaning by the time you enter the second or third or fourth round, the challenges that come out in play are not necessarily equal to who they favor or benefit. They might benefit me far more. I might just show up a challenge that rewards you for having kobolds, and I have 7 kobolds in my dungeon, so I'm awesome. I'm set up to go, and I didn't even realize, and that gives you an unequal distribution of who wants what in the game. And then secondly, the goals themselves don't always feel balanced. The challenges themselves don't always feel balanced. There are challenges that feel like they're going to cap out at 12 points, and there's challenges that can cap out at, 32 points or whatnot. There's a lot of point variability in how good the challenges are, which may well be intentional. I don't mind it because of the fact that you do want to work towards that money, and you see the challenges that come out at the beginning of every round, and so having more money means you have that decision space of, well, if that's a really good challenge, then you both should get the money and possibly give up purchasing to get it. So the idea that they are potentially unbalanced, which again, I don't know if they are for sure, they just seem like there's different balances to them, I don't mind that because that just feeds into the decision space that I'm making as I play through it. As far as final thoughts on Stonespine Architects, I overall enjoy the game. I like the puzzle that's going on here. I like the building out of the dungeon. I like having tons of things to be mindful of or consider as I build things out, as I draft cards, as I play them. The only thing really holding the game back for me at all is the fact that I do feel the first half of the game does feel like it matters less. I kind of want to feel like I'm always juggling 14 different things, and early game you're just juggling 2, your blueprints and your goal. Then you grab a challenge card and boom, now you're juggling 3. I almost want that front-loaded degree of how much to juggle, although the tricksy part there is, like I said already, then you wouldn't necessarily have that degree of evolvingness or trying to achieve challenge cards. So I like what they're doing while also wanting things to matter a bit more early game, but still very much enjoy the puzzle and think that it's a very rewarding system of how much you're trying to take into account and think through what you're trying to do as you build things out, as you take into account those goals and what's going to favor you and help you the most. Overall for me, this one's a 4 out of 5. I very much enjoy it. I kind of want a drop more from it, but overall a very solid and enjoyable experience. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, Cartographers. Cartographers from the same publisher does give you a very samey feeling as far as how you're trying to optimize across the rounds of play, trying to take into account different scoring goals and building things out in a very different system, more of a roll-and-write system with polyomino shapes, but very much gives me a similar feeling. And then secondly, if you're just looking for that dungeon building goodness, Dungeon Lords from CGE is a fantastic game, a very heavy Euro, heavier than the theme would let on, but there's a lot going on in Dungeon Lords from Czech Games Edition. They have an Anniversary Edition, a bunch of ways if you're just looking for more ways to build out and manage dungeons in a game. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this video helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.